Let's begin with a prayer of preparation, please. Lord, as we come to this Advent season now, help us to understand more clearly what it means to have this light shine in our life, overcoming our darknesses. Help us to know more and more about that light and how to be more and more that light in the world today. Amen.
Amen.
Well, as I have said, today is the beginning of Advent. It's actually the beginning of the new Christian year. Actually, we should say to each other, Happy New Year. The Christians celebrate around the world a cycle of events in Jesus' life. And December the 1st is always the time we begin the story again with the Advent, the arrival, the coming of Christ into the world. And that's why we have everything set up as we do here today. Lighting as we do the Advent candles. Each one of these candles represents one of the great things we believe in. Now, today we have lit the candle of hope. And that is what the first Sunday of Advent is all about. Hoping for this light in the darkness. Well, many years ago, I used to do children's sermons when we had a lot of children to do children's sermons with. And I always enjoyed that, though it was a bit terrifying. Especially in a larger church, when everybody was watching you and you were on TV and all that. You never knew what one of these little children were going to say. One year in our group, we had this girl. Her name was Jerry. I can never forget Jerry. She had this beautiful blonde hair. She was about 10 years old, maybe something like that. And freckles all on her face. I can see her to this day. But she was a real firecracker. She would always ask me the question I did not want to be asked. So one Advent Sunday, I was explaining to the group of children that we were now in the time of Advent, in which we celebrate the coming of Jesus into the world. And she raises her hand. I said, no, not. And she says, I thought Jesus already came. Is he coming or going? That required a little thought. Well, as I try to explain often, Advent is celebrating the continual coming of Christ in our lives. All of us perhaps have seen the light a little, maybe a lot. But every year we should find even more of that light shining in our life. This is the understanding of Advent. It is the advent of more Christ in your life than the year before. So I'm going to begin a series now of 4 messages for the month of December on this continual coming of Christ into our life to overcome the darknesses that we face. And we do face many darknesses in this world. But I've selected 4 of them that I wish to investigate with you and to explore and ask more clearly how the light of Christ helps us to overcome that particular kind of darkness. Today, we have this gospel reading from the 10th chapter of John. And it identifies for us what I think is one of the darknesses that all humanity faces. But perhaps you don't see it at first in the Scripture. I want to focus today on the 10th verse of this 10th chapter, verses 1 through 10. And it's a famous statement. I'm sure you all know it. You probably don't even have to read it. The thief comes to kill and destroy. But I have come to bring you life, and life to the full, or as some translations say, life abundantly. This is the message of the Christ that comes to us at this time of year. That Christ comes to bring us this abundant life. Okay, that's fine. That's wonderful. We're glad to hear that. But the first question that comes to my mind, and I think we should all ask this question every year actually. Why does Christ talk about bringing an abundant life? Why would he ask, why would he say such a thing as he has come to bring us life abundant? Well, logic doesn't take very long to figure that out. The life we have is not abundant, you see. If we had all abundant life and everything was all wonderful and good and we had this wonderful abundant life, then why would Christ need to come bring us abundant life? He needs to come bring us abundant life because the life we have is not all that abundant. Even if we are Christians, perhaps we do not have the fullness of God. Perhaps we do not have the abundance of God that we could have. Maybe we got just a little bit of God. You see, Jesus says, I have come that they might have life and have it abundantly. And what that identifies to us is a very key thought that we must remember as far as this darkness is concerned. And what is this darkness then? The darkness is an unfulfilled soul. Our souls are not completely full of Christ. Maybe they got a little bit of Christ. Maybe they don't have any Christ. We have an unfulfilled soul. And we have that unfulfilled soul because we do not have this abundant life that Christ is bringing into our world. So the darkness that is being talked about here is the darkness of an unfulfilled soul. The darkness of a soul that is like a hungry stomach that is just kind of gnawing and wishing for something more in life, something greater than what we have found in life, something more satisfying than what we have found in life. You see, this is why Christ comes into our life year after year after year to feed that hunger, to overcome that gnawing that something is still missing in our life, something is still missing in our souls. He comes to remind us of that darkness first, and then to fill that darkness. So first then today, I would like to speak about that darkness, because it's hard to understand how Christ can help us overcome the darkness until we understand really fully what that darkness feels like and what that darkness is like. Well, as I often do, I like to share experiences from my life because I believe these are little parables. Each one of these experiences, and all of you have these experiences, if you would just open your eyes, you would begin to see how what you have experienced is God's way of saying something to you. God's way of encouraging you, opening up your understandings, helping you become more mature than you are in the Spirit. So I share these because these stories for me are little parables of what we can understand about the Word of God. And today we have this issue of the darkness and what it feels like in our life. Now this is a human story, of course. It's not a spiritual story. But you can interpolate from the human to the spiritual, I hope. A few weeks ago, some friends of ours, we got together and decided to go out to eat at one of the restaurants here in Cuenca. It's a restaurant we'd been to before. All of us in that little group had been there. And we knew the chef was very creative. And we kind of looked forward to a delicious meal that night. So we sat down and saw all the wonderful things that were being offered. And what was being offered, and especially for myself that loves fish and seafood, was the fish of the day. And so what we did was all four of us ordered the fish of the day and figured that this chef that we had learned to love so much because of his talents would fix it in such a wonderful way that it would be delicious. And so we waited and waited a little longer. And then eventually the waiter came out with these 4 big bowls. They were about this big, sitting on a tray. And we were excited about that, thinking, oh, how delicious this is going to be. And then the waiter set the bowls down in front of us. And all of us at the table, all 4 of us, we did exactly the same thing. We looked in the bowl. Down at the very bottom was this little bitty piece of fish and about 4 or 5 little vegetables around it. You know, you could have put it in a cup. You didn't need no big bowl. Well, we thought to ourselves, well, it must taste really good. And so we decided to, start eating it. All of us did. And it took about 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Gone, totally. Well, nobody wanted to be crass and say something like, gee, that wasn't very much to eat. So we kind of looked at each other for a while and talked a little bit more. And then finally, someone said, well, is that all there is to it? And we all had to agree that was all there was to it. For that price that we were paying. That was it. No more. At that point, we felt, at least I felt, an expression that we use in English, I felt ripped off. I really did. The expression ripped off basically means that somebody has stolen something from you in a sneaky way. They ripped it off. They took it away from you. And our money was being taken away from us for a very little amount of food. One of the other guests at the table said, I came here, I just wanted to get full, that's all. But none of us were full, and none of us were satisfied. And so actually we ended up ordering an appetizer in the great hopes that that would help us. But actually I have to say, it was even smaller than what we had anticipated. And so there we were, still hungry actually, with a bill that was quite large actually for Cuenca. So, you know, we left, we paid the bill, and we went out into the night to go home and get something more to eat. But we really felt ripped off. Now, every time we drive by that restaurant, my wife and I, we just automatically start talking about what a rip-off that place is. Now, I share that with you because that's the world in which we live. This world is a rip-off. It's the biggest rip-off you've ever had in your life. Oh, we think it's going to be great. We think there's a lot of wonderful things here, and we're going to enjoy this, and we're going to enjoy that, and all this is going to be really good. But when it comes down to the bottom line, whatever it is we thought was going to be so good, whatever it is we thought was going to satisfy us in such a wonderful way, it may have thrilled us, it may have made us feel good, but for a while only, that fades, and the next thing you know, we're still hungry. And that which had promised us such wonderfulness feels like it ripped us off. This is what Jesus came to do for the first time in the history of man. To show humanity what a rip-off life is. There's so many things you can enjoy in this life. There's so many things you can taste. There's so many experiences you can have. And all of them are wonderful, absolutely. I'm not trying to say these are bad things. I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't have anything to do with these things. But all I'm trying to say is the same thing Jesus said. At the end of the day, you end up spending a lot of money for a little bit of bang. That's what you end up with in this world. It doesn't satisfy your soul. It doesn't give you that complete contentment and that complete peace that would make you be able to feel joyous in this life every day of your life. But the sadness is, we live in that darkness. And so we're drawn into that darkness. And we spend so much of our time, so much of our money pursuing those things, only to find out that they're no more than a little small amount in the bottom of a bowl. So this is the first point that Jesus makes when he says, I have come that they might have life abundant. The point is simply the opposite of that. This life is not abundant. This world is filled with all kinds of ways to get ripped off. Ways that would tempt you to promote yourself. Ways that would tempt you to pleasure yourself. Ways that would tempt you to gratify yourself. Filled with all sorts of ways, every which way you can think about it. And yet none of it satisfies the soul. This is why Jesus said so clearly, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that flows from the mouth of God. You see? This is the point that Jesus makes when he introduces this idea of abundant life. The first thing we've got to learn is not to be tricked, not to be deceived, thinking that this human life, this worldly life, is what's going to satisfy our souls. Now we can enjoy the human things, we can do the human things, but let not be deceived. Let us not be deceived into thinking that those things are going to be the answer to what we really, really need in our life to make us really, really feel that we're doing what we should be doing, where we should be doing it, and the way we should be doing it, you see. That's the first point that Jesus would make here. Now, of course, there's a second point here, and that is the abundant life. What is this abundant life? What did Jesus talk about when he spoke about the abundant life? And more importantly, what kind of life did Jesus show us by example is the abundant life? The life that Jesus showed us was a life of self-sacrificing love for others, self-giving love to others, self-opening up of oneself to the whole world with acceptance and love. That's the kind of life that Jesus showed us. From the beginning of his ministry to the end of his ministry, all the way through the resurrection, it's all about this new life of self-sacrificing, self-giving love for all other life. Because that's what God does. God sacrifices God's self for us all day long. That's what Jesus has done. Jesus sacrificed himself for us all day long. And those who have heard Jesus and understood his word understands that that's the kind of life that will satisfy our souls. That's the kind of life that will bring to us an absolute feeling of contentment, an absolute feeling of peace, an absolute feeling of joy. That's the kind of life we were built to live. That's the kind of life we were born to live. Not to be deceived by the world into having those things that do not satisfy and thinking that that's all there is. No, we are born to love. We are born to give. As Jesus said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. And this is the absolute truth that he brought into this world. Now, these days, there's so much we see on the internet, especially, the television especially, all kinds of other communication equipment, that makes people believe that this world is filled with darkness, that there is no actual hope for this world anymore, that this world is really at the edge of oblivion, and many would speak about that. Many would make a lot of money selling books about that. But the fact of the matter is, this world is not at that point. This world is not there. And as I look upon this world, as a person of faith, what I see in this world, hope. That's what I see. And I've seen it every year, every Advent, and it's gotten brighter and brighter and brighter. You see, we as Christians are people of hope, and our hope is that the light is in fact overcoming the darkness, no matter how dark that darkness may appear. This is our hope. This is our faith. This is the light we need to see. Again, a personal experience from my life that I remember all the time these days. Back when I was a young pastor, you know, when you're a young associate pastor, you get all the jobs the senior pastor doesn't want to do dumped onto you. And one of the jobs our senior pastor did not want to do was the early morning Easter sunrise service. Now, he assigned that to me. So I was up at 4:30 in the morning, going out, and this was in Austin, Texas. There's a mountain there. They call it a mountain. But now, having seen these mountains, it's kind of a hill. Mount Bunnell, they called it. And we had a little park up there, and a little place where you could have a sunrise service. And so I would go up to the top of that place in the early darkness, about 4:30 in the morning, to set up and get ready for our sunrise service. And I did that for, I think, 3 years or so. And every year I did it, I was always amazed by the dawn. It sneaks up on you. You just don't catch it, you know. You're setting up this, getting those things ready, putting the chairs here, putting the chairs there, and it's in total darkness. You got your flashlight trying to put all that together, and then all of a sudden you rise. It's a little lighter than it was. I don't need my flashlight anymore. You turn it off. And then you continue to work on that. And you begin to see the dark sky turn to little pinky clouds and little gray clouds. And slowly there is this dawning of this light in that darkness. So that by the time the people begin to struggle in for the service, the light is beginning to break through in little points here and little points there and a little point there. It's not a full sunrise yet. It's not a full-blown, huge amount of light yet. But it's enough light that you know the light's coming. You got no doubt. Because you can see just enough of it to know that it won't be long. And by the time we came to the end of the service, by the time we got to that special time when we had our donuts and coffee, that was a real special time. The sun was already up and the day was already beginning, and you felt the power of that amazing light that was now filling the world. We could see who each other were now. We weren't in the darkness anymore. We could see where we were now. We weren't in the darkness anymore. We could see clearly what was going on. I share this little story with you because that is the way I understand the coming of the light into the world. It is a dawning. And a dawn takes time. God spends a long time bringing this dawn into the world. But the good news we share is that the dawn has begun. And the good news we believe is that the light is coming. And we are those who proclaim to this dark, dark world, the light has shone in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Never will. Never will. It is an act of reality. It's a fact of life. This light is coming. This light is coming into our world and into our life. And slowly but surely, I love that expression, slowly but surely, people are being transformed, mainly through the ministries of Christ. They're being transformed into people of light who share the light in the world. People of self-sacrificing, self-giving love who dedicate themselves to helping the poor, to helping those who suffer, to helping the sick, to helping the elderly, who dedicate themselves to taking care of their fellow man because that's what their heavenly Father does, that's what God does, that's what Jesus has done, that's what they know they're here to do. Slowly but surely, you see that developing around the world. You know, the world focuses all on the wrong thing. So much worried about this government, so much worried about that government, so much worried about this world and that world and this agreement and that agreement. So much worry. Let me tell you, all of that will be gone soon. Gone. Of course, there'll be some new worries and new things come up, but those things never last. What lasts is the light and its dawning. That's what lights up this world. And we need not be deceived. The things of this world do not satisfy, and the darkness of this world will not be victorious ever. That's the Christian stance. That's what we absolutely believe. Some people say, well, you sound like an optimist. Yeah, a Christian is the greatest eternal optimist there ever was, because we believe in the coming of this light. And I have seen it all throughout my ministry. I've seen these people, how they are transformed. What transforms them? What transforms them is the light that dawns in their head. Oh, this is what I should be doing. I should be helping those who need my help. I should be helping those whom I can help. Why? Because it makes me more like who God wants me to be, you see. That's why we do it. We do it because of the transformation that takes place in us. We become less and less of a selfish person and more of a selfless person. And in that comes peace. In that comes joy. Now, when I've been here in Cuenca, associated here with ICC, I've seen this light, just like an early dawn. A little point of light here and a little point of light there. And I want to share with you some of those points I've seen. I will not mention any names at all, but I have seen here in our community those little points of light, and they're growing brighter and brighter and brighter. At this point in my sermon manuscript, I have a big blank because I just wanted to share it off the top of my head, what I have seen here. I have seen people who have gone to this orphanage we support for the severely disabled and ill orphans. I've seen people go there and feed those poor children who cannot feed themselves. I've talked to one of our community who, in doing that, was thrown up on by one of the children, and she praised God for that. Never did she says, never had I felt so much the love of God as in that moment. Oh, and I have seen people here who have gone and dedicated themselves to teach English to those who might use it to find a better job, to go and help the refugees, the Venezuelan refugees and all the others who come into our midst, to have a little bit more brighter life, to bring Christmas presents to them, to bring them toys that they might not ever have for their children. I've seen that, and in seeing that, I see the light. That's what the world needs, is this kind of light. And I have seen it over and over again here in this community. I've seen people in our community who have gone to take care of elderly Ecuadorians who have nothing to do with their family. Elderly Ecuadorians who are suffering from dementia and Alzheimer's, who've been abandoned by their family. I've seen people from our community go there and bring a little happiness to them. Help them to dance a little. Help them to sing a little. I've seen that. And when I've seen that, I've seen the light. That's why I have such hope. I'm not an optimist. I'm a realist. I've seen those things. And if those kind of things can dwell in the hearts of human beings, then this world's going to be okay. We're going to be way okay because that kind of light can develop within us. I've seen persons from this community spend their day at the soup kitchen serving soup to those folks who need something to eat that day. I've seen persons in our community to go down to the place where they take care of those AIDS victims and those persons that are broken and families that are in misery. I've seen them go down there and volunteer to help and to donate. And donations, have I not seen so much donations here? It's amazing to us on the financial committee how many of our missions are met by your donations. That's the light of the world shining in our midst. You see, this is the whole point of it right there. I believe the light is coming into this world because I have seen the light here in the midst of you. In the midst of you here. I've seen it also in the whole broader area of Cuenca, not just here at ICC. I have seen others here in Cuenca, other persons who have felt that and understood that light and are now serving in some way, giving in some way. It's all about serving. It's all about giving. It's all about love. That's what it's all about. That's what our world needs. That's the light that Jesus brought into the world. That's the light He has come to give us. And why? Because that's the abundant life. Amen. It's the life that gives you true satisfaction and true joy. So then, to sum it up right quickly, we have two things here today we want to think about. One is the darkness of this world and what a rip-off it is, and how it will never satisfy your soul, no matter how much money you spend, how much time you spend. Oh, it may be fun, it may be enjoyable, it may be something you would like to do, and that's all fine. But don't be deceived. It's not going to feed your soul. And the second thought is that the light that Jesus brings into this world is the light that shows us who we are, why we're here, what we're supposed to be doing. We are the children of love. That's why we're here, and to do love is what we are supposed to be about. You see, that's the 2 points from this particular scripture we have here today. One final little thing now, as far as a conclusion. Another little experience from my life that happened a couple of weeks ago as well. My wife and I had decided that we would like to have falafels and hummus for lunch one day. And so there is a place not too far away, a little Lebanese restaurant, where we can go and get some falafels and some hummus. And for exercise that day, I decided to walk there, which is good for you. And so I walked all the way down there. I got the falafels and I got the hummus. And I started walking back to bring it to our dinner table, lunch table, I'm sorry. And on the way, as I was walking down, I think it might have been Trace Day, November, I saw this poor man leaning on a tree, a very shabbily dressed, sick-looking man, kind of coughing. He was a very, very poor person, probably sick as well. And I kind of expected maybe for him to hold out his hand for a donation or for something. But he didn't do anything. He just lay there looking at me with these sad, sad eyes. And I looked at my little white sack, and the thought came to me, give it to him. So I went over and gave him our falafels and our hummus, blessed him, and went on my way. Of course, I turned the corner and immediately went back to buy some more. The owner of the shop was a little confused. You just buy that. But let me tell you, on the walk back home, what contentment, what joy, what amazing peace. To know that just in a simple little act, it was no big deal. But you really felt like you had just done what you're supposed to be doing. You really felt like you had just done that. And you felt good about the fact that you are who you are meant to be, and that the purpose and meaning of your life is to do more and more of those things. Oh, the light's coming into this world, and it's coming into your heart, and what you only need to do is to let it shine more and more and more. Look for every opportunity you can find to show love to anybody you can find. It was John Wesley, the founder of the United Methodist Church, who said so clearly, love as often as you can, as many as you can, while you can. And that's the way it is. That's the light of the world that we celebrate today. And that's why we're able to understand exactly what Jesus meant when he said, I have come into the world that you might have life and have it abundantly. Amen. Amen. Amen.